Okay, Martin Popoff, it's great to have you, man, to discuss what is very popular in goldminemag.com, and it's your top 20 lists uh,
Nice. Very cool.
with some great ones. The best one we were talking about is what was it, over 15-minute prog songs, or
I think I
remind.
did an over 10 and I didn't. No, I did a under five for sure. No, I don't think I did an over 10. I did an under five, but we did the silly prog songs as well, right?
Silly prog songs did well as
Yeah.
um, now I liked your last one. We'll get to that, but let's talk about the newest one, and that's the album release of half live, half studio. Now
Right.
you picked 20. You said that you had 40 in mind, and that kind of blew me away because I think you pretty much nailed it. There was only one album which I was surprised at, and we'll get to that. But the only ones I can think of that maybe should have been on the list: Pink Floyd, Amagama, and
Right. Yeah.
one of your Canadian bands, Helix. What was that name of that album? Half
Oh,
Live.
right. Half alive. That's right. Yeah. Good one. Good one.
But
Yeah.
what automatically came to mind, and it would be disqualified because it's a soundtrack album, and there are only like three studio songs on it, would be the "Kids Are Alright" by the Who. Now,
Okay.
there were three studio songs, the rest were live, but that would be a soundtrack compilation, so I think it would be disqualified right away.
Yeah, and when I went through this exercise, I was finding ones with one studio song, two studio songs, three studio songs, and then I said, okay, well, three will be our barrier here, kind of thing.
Right.
But it almost made me think that I would do an actual one of my own audio podcast episodes where we look at just that one extra song, and
Mm.
but for the life of me, when I think of those albums that tack on a studio song, it's usually a really crappy studio song that nobody ever remembers. So I'd like to maybe rise to the challenge and see what are the best ones of all time, because I can't think of a single good one off the top of my head right now where
I
you
think
get the one extra studio song, right?
what would be a good top 20 or songs left off a studio album? Because there wasn't room. I come right away, I think of Total Eclipse by Iron Maiden. Why the hell
Yeah,
was that
good one.
song?
Yeah,
Why was that song left off? That's like one of their
yeah,
best songs, one of Bruce
yeah,
Dickinson's best vocal songs, and
yeah.
probably my favorite Iron Maiden song almost. It's just incredible. It was on the B side of Number of the Beast when it was originally released before the album came out. And as kids, we were like, "Wow, that is." You remember the? Do you remember that 45? It was the devil fighting Eddie.
Yes, yeah.
Yes,
And
that
generally speaking,
Exorcist.
what those guys did was the good cover versions, right? And I've
Yes, they
always
always
said that
did that.
Iron Maiden was the first band that thought like us as fans about what covers to cover, right?
Doing
They
Jethro
picked something
Tull,
obscure that they could make heavy. Yeah. Golden Earring,
right?
Montrose, I've got the fire, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, that is a good one. And one of the fascinating things about leaving songs off albums is sometimes they leave it off because it's too similar to another song on the
Mm,
album where they go, we don't want two of this on the album, right? and
right.
and that's a fascinating concept too, because basically you've got you've got a perfectly good song, but they know that the critics are going to look at it and say, well, you kind of recycled that riff from that song on side one, sort of thing. So sometimes it's for that reason. But yeah, sometimes they will specifically record something that's an original for a B-side as well. um and then other ones, yeah, it gets into a gray area, because then you got start moving down into the demo zone and say, okay, they didn't really finish this. Is it a song that's really left off because it didn't get finished? So it'd be interesting to go through all of those and find them. It sounds like a
Martin,
lot
you're
of
giving
homework.
me a
So
lot of ideas here.
yeah, I know. Yeah, there's
Top
there's
20
lots.
demos. But
Yeah.
let's get back to the half studio, half live.
Okay.
What did you leave off here? I'm curious.
Oh my God. I don't
Give
have
me
the
a
list in
couple.
front of me here.
Was it Pink Floyd?
Yes, definitely Amagama came to mind immediately.
Helix was not on there though. That you usually do your support of Canadian bands.
Yeah, I totally whiffed on that one. I didn't even think of that one. That's a good one. Yeah, and the other thing that it got me thinking about on doing some sort of topic, and maybe we've done it for a Goldmine top 20, and maybe I've half covered it in history in five songs, but the idea of albums that are all live, but it's new originals, right? Pete and
Hmm,
I did that on a Sea of
interesting.
Tranquility with the whole like Vardis 100 miles an hour, MC5 kick out the jams, Ted Nugent intensities in 10 cities. Wasn't it Neil
MC5,
Young?
you think I've
Tonight's the
read
night.
over, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and Jackson Brown, right? The one where but I think he went
Right.
into studios
Wow.
all over
Good.
the
Okay,
place when
good.
on the
Yeah.
road. Yeah, so that's a cool one too. Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's start with, I'm just going to do like a little countdown, then we'll just comment on each one. But this one was, talk about, it has the word unexpected in the title. So it was unexpected for me. Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush, Tales of the
Yeah.
Unexpected. Wow. I have not thought of that album. And in fact, I was looking through my record collection and I forgot Frank Marino was in there. Like, the other day I
Yeah.
was looking. Frank Marino, he's one of those forgotten names, and it's kind of sad, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I got into a bit of a tiff with him at one point. He got miffed off that I wrote fairly negative reviews of most of those albums at one point, right? But yeah, I just it the recordings were never really good, right? Or especially in this era. I mean, this is when the recordings should have been better, but they weren't very good. He actually sounded better on those earlier albums, but and also it was so Hendrix derived of the type of Hendrix that I wasn't a massive fan of. Like I loved Robin Trower, right?
mm,
But
Eli
this
Roth.
this material just kind of rubbed me the
Right.
wrong way, and this whole album kind of rubs me the wrong way. It's got the covers, right? The tired songs getting covered, and then the originals. So I had it low, but I kind of wanted to put it on. But like you say, to remind people that this guy exists, right?
Right. Wow, you really you got me there. We'll move on to the next one. Yes, Keys to Ascension 2. Um, And Yes has always been one of those bands like you expect they were so good live for the, you know, I mean, especially with John Anderson, right? And up to this day, I went to see them a few years ago and they've still got it live. I mean, so you expect them to have some good live cuts. Um, but what made you pick this one?
Before we get there, you asked me that question, and I quickly opened my doc of my notes on this. So now I don't know if all these apply, but here's I think what I left off the list. Okay, you ready to go?
Okay.
Uh, okay, so we've got hang on if I can scroll while being on mic here. Let's just go down a little. Okay, so like I say, I didn't check all these exactly to see how close they apply, but Traffic's Last Exit, Family
Ooh.
Anyway, The Fall, Seminal Live, Dion, Sanctuary, Richie P. Havens, 1983, Soft Machines double album 6, Miles Davis Live Evil, I Sing the Body Electric, Weather Report, Wire, It's Beginning to and Back Again, Humble Pie
I mean, you
Heated,
could
That
go
Way
off
to Go.
forever. I mean, basically here you kind of centered on classic rock.
Yeah, and things we would know a little more
Yeah.
and things that our
Yeah.
readership likes. But we've got Pentangle Sweet Child, Lou Reed Street Hassle, Side Six of the
Mm.
Last Waltz, Black Crows Before the Frost Until the Freeze, Mo, Wormwood, Dave Mason, Headkeeper, um, Dylan Self Portrait, Robert Palmer, Maybe It's Live, Marvin Gaye Live, Joe Jackson, Big World, uh, Neil Young, Rust Never Sleeps, Japan Oil on
Well,
Canvas,
yeah,
Styx Return to Paris. So yeah, all of these could have been, a mix of do they qualify or not. John Cale Comes Alive, Rory Gallagher, Irish Tour 74, Steve Hillage Live Herald, Al Stewart Live Indian Summer, Rolling Stones Out of Our Heads, and December's Children, Heart Magazine, Simon and Garfunkel Bridge Over Troubled Water, Frost Rock and Roll Music, Yardbirds Having a Rave Up, Sham 69 I did include. There's Amagama. Marshall Tucker, Where We All Belong, I think is a good one everybody mentions. Small Faces, Autumn Stone, Moody Blues, Caught Live, +5.
wow.
Eagles Help Freezes Over, Rolling Stones Flashpoint, Black Sabbath Reunion, Hall of the Mountain Grill, Hawkwind. Uh, so yeah, there's a
A
lot that you could check, but I wanted to make sure these ones
couple
obviously.
stones there, yeah. But Heart magazine, that's one I forgot about.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
good
So
one.
yeah, so there you go. So yeah, lot goes into checking these things out and picking what goes on them, right?
Yeah, you gotta
So
have a
yeah, Keys
good.
to Ascension. Yeah, this is pretty cool. So yes, got into this this era where they were actually very, very prog again, right? And so there is a Keys to Ascension and a Keys to Ascension 2, and both of them do this. So I thought that was pretty cool.
And of course, you got Chris Squire live, so
Yeah,
that always cuts
absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a good one. Mountain Flowers of Evil at number 18,
Yeah. Yeah, good
1975.
quality studio stuff there. It was good. And the live wasn't as good because as usual, I think as I mentioned here, yeah, the live side is a jammy deconstruction, typical of the way bands played at the time. So yeah, I hated these live albums that had these massive long songs with medleys and God forbid old rock and roll revival stuff in them. And a favorite one for me to, you know, send up kind of thing is made in Japan, but Rainbow again, Rainbow on stage is ridiculous
Well,
for those
Blackmore had to
concepts.
get his fill, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
By the way, this whole concept, as I say somewhere in this article, completely annoys me, right? Because when we try to talk about these albums, we don't know whether to include them in the live albums or include them in the studio album, and you start having that awkward conversation. Well, it's half there and half the studio side, so that gets worse as we get further down the list, right?
well, I love how you compare Crossroader, right, to Leonard Skinner on Miss
Mm,
on this Mountain album. I was like, wow,
right.
that's
Yeah.
pretty accurate. Okay, we were talking about Blackmore, so Rainbow Final Vinyl number 17. And I didn't think of this one at all. So, but it does have Jealous Lover by Jolyn Turner and Bad Girl, Graham Bonnet. Graham Bonnet is really underrated, man. I think he is such a great singer.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't hear his last album. Was it good? Did you hear
Oh
it?
yeah, the Graham Bonnet band stuff is almost better than the Alcatraz stuff,
Wow.
even with Graham Bonnet in it, because he it's less Teutonic and Ingve like, right? Like it's just
Right.
really good songwriting. So I hate the name of the band, the Graham Bonnet band. I always hated when bands would do that, right? But yeah, this Rainbow is just it's not a very good one because it's posthumous. It's the Hodge. It's just a compilation live album and compilation rarities, right? And there's only 3 songs, kind of thing. So it's not truly in the spirit of building one of these albums and putting it out, right?
Uh, and 16, this one is I like it. Sweet, strung up.
Yeah,
It just Sweet has always been, I think you put it here. They did tough rockers really well.
yeah.
This would be in the power pop. This could definitely be in power pop. If we did
Yeah,
one.
it's a good
Right?
point. They've got their power, especially later on, right? As soon as you get to
Yeah.
on the level
You
or
could
level
put
head.
Slade
I
in there
always
too.
get those, yeah. And then cut above the rest and Sweet Six, they're definitely more in the power because they stopped. They put the distortion pedal away on off the record, right? 77 was kind of the last heavy album. But yeah, they fit, and with those glammy vocals, and there's a funny crossover with this version of UK power pop in the late 70s from long haired guys that is also a little bit like two things. It's like their version of yacht rock, and it's also their version of polite, cleaned up glam from the early 70s, right? So you get your
Oh,
Sailor and your Pilot and City Boy and all those
wow.
bands. So that's
Um,
an interesting genre to me. This thing, I always call it like polite glam, which starts in 75, 76, 77 sort of thing, right?
well, think how much a band like Slade influenced, kind of like poppy heavy metal, right?
Yeah. And
Quiet
Kiss.
Riot and
Yeah.
so on. I like the next one, and this was one that I thought of immediately. Number 15, you had Cream Wheels of Fire. And I
Yeah.
agree with you on this one. Cream, when they did the covers, it was like, ho hum. But when they did their own music, it was brilliant.
Yep.
I
Good
didn't
point.
like I never got into the classic when they covered classic blues. I liked when Zeppelin did it. I liked when the Stones did it because I don't know, it's just when Cream did it, it just felt like, um, a jam band, maybe. I don't know, man. It's
Yeah.
just doing blues.
I don't like when anybody did it. I just I
Right?
I don't want guys doing covers at all, and B blues covers is like almost the worst thing. I just don't want to hear anybody do blues covers because, because with these bands, their originals are bluesy enough for me,
Hmm.
anyways, right? Kind of thing.
And it's
So,
got one of their best songs, which is you call proto metal,
mhm.
Politician, which really has a doomy, dark riff in it.
Yeah,
Really
yeah,
dark. And by dark, I don't mean like satanic. I just mean like kind of like depressing and gloomy. And
yeah,
it fits the subject, politician, right? So it
yeah,
kind of I love that song. But here's another one, next one, 14, the Allman Brothers Eat a Peach. That's I think that a lot of Goldmine readers would include this on their
yeah,
list. But here you have that 35-minute live mountain jam. Um, I mean, it is a classic album. You can't get away from that. So it has to be mentioned here. Um, but on the next, another one that I would include, probably one of my favorites, U2 Rattle and Hum at number
mhm,
13. And you said this is sort of like a soundtrack album. Yeah, so maybe I could have had The Kids Are Right in here. But you know, here's another band where you say they're doing these blues kind of I think they're like tributes, right? Angel of
mhm.
Harlem is really a great song. And one song that you actually picked for your last top 20, Bullet the Blue Sky. Your last top 20 was um, headbanging songs by non-headbanging bands. And
Right. Yeah,
this
yeah,
was a good pick for that. And you had two other great ones on that list. There was Jane by Jefferson
oh
Starship
yeah,
and Heart Barracuda. I remember, in the 80s, early 80s, I don't know how that was in Canada, but in America, you'd be cruising around in your car and radio, and hard rock was so scarce. Excuse
yeah,
me. That when Jane came on, or Barracuda, you were
yeah,
like so happy. So
yeah,
happy, like wow, a heavy song. So it was
yeah,
almost like hard rock, heavy metal,
yeah,
because you
yeah.
weren't
That's
going to
funny.
even hear Crazy Train. I mean, you
Yeah,
weren't going to hear anything that was, really heavy on during that time period. I don't know if it
yeah,
was like kind of like the heavy metal was seen, we're very puritanical in America, so I don't know if it was like they didn't want to play something too controversial or something, but
yeah,
you would always hear you were waiting for that Heart Barracuda or Jane, right? Um,
yeah,
I love Jane. I think that's a brilliant song. The guitar lead, everything about that song is great.
yeah.
Probably the only
What
song.
I love about that whole concept is I love that it kind of proves that you like heavy metal, but you won't admit it to yourself, right? When these songs are massive, right? And
Yeah,
and the bands are having a blast playing them,
yeah, and
not to name drop, but every time I say that, I remember Paul McCartney telling me that, right? We were
right,
talking about Helter Skelter, and he said, yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun to do that, right?
yeah.
Just turn up and rock. And I believe Mark Knopfler even said that once in an interview about doing money for nothing, and
Mm,
rather than being Mr. Acoustic Flamenco guy,
right.
um, putting on the distortion pedals. So yeah, so the fact that Barracuda is one of their biggest songs just tells you something about hard rock that you really like it, but you won't admit it to yourself, kind of thing. So that was funny. And when I'm arguing with people on Facebook, sometimes I say, "Don't Barracuda me," which means when someone says, "Oh, what do you mean dust isn't heavy? Haven't you heard Suicide?" And it's like my standard answer is, "Yeah, don't Barracuda me." It's like the rest of the album is that you pick the heaviest song on the whole album, right? And
Mhm.
they got two albums and nothing's even as heavy as Suicide. So you're Barracudaing me here. So yeah, it's examples when people talk about oh, that's a great album. I love that song, right? So all of a
Mm.
sudden, it's the same kind of thing. I'm not saying the heavy soft thing in this example, but when people are defending an album and they start mentioning one song, they're already backtracking to a single song kind of thing, right? And you call them out on it kind of thing. So, but the same thing happens with the heavy thing too. It's like, oh man, these guys are so heavy. Take a listen to this song. It's like, well, yeah, 5 records worth. It's the heaviest song they ever did. So it
Right.
doesn't really work that way. Yeah.
But the next is one of my favorite bands, number 12, The Kinks. Everybody
Yeah.
in showbiz. And I always felt like the Kinks, talk about American radio. They weren't, they should have been played more on American radio. I just don't, classic rock. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't get it. And especially like this album, there's a lot of great, songs on here. Celluloid Heroes, of course, but
Yeah.
um, you said it's like it's kind of like a theatrical album where the Kings were getting into this on stage conceptual type of stuff, right? But
Mm-hmm.
this one's a classic and it falls in perfect with your top 20 here.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, that whole era was just really weird for the Kinks, and it started picking up and getting a little cooler around Sleepwalking and Misfits, and then they had their brief moment in the sun. I think they had 2 gold albums with
A
low
comeback,
budget and give the people what they want. And I remember everybody was excited and totally into the Kinks at that time. That was just great. All those songs off of low budget were on the radio. I mean,
right?
almost everything from that album, at
Word of
least up here
Mouth is
in
a
Canada.
great album too.
Yeah.
Um, Guns N' Roses is the next one, number 11, Lies. I was never a big fan of this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I just, I don't know. At this point, I like one Guns N' Roses album, and that's Appetite. Maybe Live Like a Suicide. After that, I just, Patience just didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
The Whistling, perhaps, but what do you think?
Yeah, and it is a big lie, right? Because the live stuff isn't really live, and then the studio stuff is all kind of acoustics, and then it all comes from the original EP, which was a lie, right? It was, it wasn't an indie EP either. And on top of not being live, it was like a fake little label put together by Geffen to put this thing out, right? So the whole thing is a bit like that. But yeah, so it's a famous one, right? It's a famous half live, half studio thing. And yeah, it's so annoying to talk about whether saying it's an album of theirs or not kind of thing, because it starts as half an album and then it becomes a short album. So it's never a real proper album either, right?
Well, Guns N' Roses kind of Motley Crue'd me, you know. When I say that, I mean like I'd love the first Motley Crue, and then after that, because it was punky, it was glammy, all these
Yeah.
right elements, and then they went kind of commercial and then they started upplaying the debauchery and too much of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll forced on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Like it
yeah.
was, they're
Great
trying
point. Yeah.
they're trying too hard to be that. Just,
Yeah.
Keith Richards wasn't trying. I don't even know if he liked it being,
Yeah.
drunk. He was
Yeah. Yeah.
experimenting, got hooked on the stuff. It was kind of an accident. There,
Yeah.
it's that when you're trying to be, fucked up.
I love all those memes about Keith Richards. Like, here's Keith Richards with Adam and Eve and stuff like that, right? I saw one the other day. How did it go? It says, well, yeah, we all need to start worrying about what kind of planet we're going to leave for Keith Richards.
And if he got one human, I would love it to be Keith. I just love that guy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Next, Joy Division. Still, this is a good pick.
yeah.
It didn't come to my mind. Um, you called Sister Ray jammy, uh, but this would be a good pick because it just it wouldn't come top of mind, and the next one definitely wouldn't come top of mind.
Right.
Nine, Jam 69. Now this is a damn good band.
Yeah. Yeah, I like
He
these
said
guys.
Monty Connor loves it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think
Monty, I just remember being with Monty once, and we were raving about the Damned and Sham 69, and he's going, "Yeah, you're gonna be a Barstool breakout," and that whole thing. I thought it was funny. And that the odd thing about my relationship with this band is I loved all the early punk when it came out at the time, and I got it all, but Sham
yeah.
69 I kind of whiffed on because
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't think it was heavy enough, and they were late arriving anyways. So I only got into Sham 69, in recent decades. What I don't know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever. But I was not. I didn't have these albums in 79 and 80 and 81 because it was just too it wasn't headbanging enough for me. It wasn't heavy enough.
Yeah, for some reason, I always thought of in the 2000s when the Libertines came out, they kind of fell in this category, which I liked. This sort of like loose,
Wow.
sort of Cockney, like I don't give a damn, I'm English,
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
attitude. I don't care what American listeners think.
yeah.
Um, King Crimson is the next one, and this is, talk about Prague. This has got to be up there. Starless and Bible Black. Um, I know. Are you a big King Crimson fan?
Definitely. But my favorite King Crimson albums are the red, blue, and yellow period ones, those
Okay.
80s ones. And I went and saw Beat recently, when they came to town at Massey Hall here. Beat being, Steve Vai, Adrian Belew, Tony Levin, Danny Carey, right? Playing only songs off of those albums, right? Um, I just love that period. But the earlier period is incredible as well. And it's so extremely creative and strange, right? What they do. I mean, they're just absolutely the most fearlessly creative band of all time. And I always refer to them as krautrock, right? Because to me, they're almost like the most insanely krautrock band you could possibly imagine. And
You
yet
know,
they're British kind of thing,
they've
right?
always been one of those bands, and you probably have bands, that well, every time I hear them, I love it, but I don't own any of their albums, so it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
strange.
Yeah,
I should own their albums because everything I hear by them, I love it. I'm sure you have bands like that yourself that,
yeah, yeah.
um, okay, so Frank Zappa's next at 7, Shake Your Booty. And this is a great album, classic album by him. Um,
Yeah.
I can think of which song you chose a song off of this for the headbanging. No, 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 that
Oh,
was
Valley
that
Girl,
Valley
probably.
Girl.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a song on here, right? I don't care what you say. No, no, it's what is it?
There's the fast punky one.
Yes.
Yeah.
God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on this.
Not broken hearts are for assholes.
Yes.
Is
Yeah,
it? Is it that one?
yeah,
Okay.
that's a good one. I mean, it starts off really heavy. Um,
Mhm.
it's not long enough. But there's also the one by is it Cheech Marin? Um,
Oh yeah, Earache My Eye.
yeah.
The
What
Cheech
album
and
is
Chong
that on?
song.
What album
I
is
think that's
that
on
on?
Big Bamboo,
Yes, you're
maybe.
right. Wow.
Could be.
You're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and that song I remember as a kid, the two songs that went together that all like almost blurred the lines between comedy and novelty hard rock
Mm,
were Earache My Eye and White Punks on Dope,
mm.
right? Those two always went together. But yeah, this Frank Zappa. So now on this list with King Crimson and Frank Zappa, we've got a similar sort of breaking of the rules where these guys are pastiching, hybriding live stuff, live just only the guitar solo onto this, or they did some
Right,
backing
right.
tracks live and then they put something on in the studio, or vice versa. And Zappa all throughout the whole career. Like when I was researching this list, there was a guy, I think it was on Reddit, listed all the albums and went, line. Actually, let me find that. It was actually kind of interesting.
And
Um,
you said, obviously he is a musical genius. He also was, God, he was, if you listen to him interviewed, he was philosophically, he could tell you about the American experience. I mean,
oh yeah, yeah.
he was
So
brilliant at
listen to this, Pat. So this guy on Reddit said, grosso modo, Frank used live material and all the yes, all the studio albums. Uncle Meat, 3 live tracks. Weasels Rip My Flesh. We can say it's a half live, half studio album, actually. Burnt Weenie Sandwich, Holiday in Berlin, guitar solo, excerpts of The Little House I Used to Live in, Chunga's Revenge, 1 live track, One Size Fits All, Inca Roads, basic tracks and guitar solo, Bongo Fury, half live, half studio, Zoodlers, Black Napkins, and guitar solo on Friendly Little Finger. Your Booty, most of the basic tracks, plus some entirely live instrumentals. So what he's saying is what's live on these albums, right? Joe's
it.
Garage, live guitar solo solo tracks over studio. Shut Up and Play Your Guitar, live and studio. You Are What You Is, guitar solo on theme from the third movement of Sinister Footwear. Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch, basic tracks and guitar solos on Drowning Witch. Man from Utopia, Dangerous Kitchen, Jazz Discharge Party Hats, basic tracks. Them Or Us, many basic tracks and guitar solos. Think Fish, some basic tracks. And yeah, the incredible thing with him, one of my favorite albums by his that by him that nobody talks about is Broadway the Hard Way,
Hmm.
which is all live and it's all new originals basically, right? And I love that album. It's very comedic. It's very topical to unite or to like Pat Robertson and Jesse Jackson are on there and Michael Jackson's on there, right? And Elvis, which is still topical as something recent sort of thing. So, but yeah, so he is absolutely breaking the rules with all this stuff throughout the whole catalog, which is amazing. And like I say, King Crimson was doing kind of the same thing.
And you don't know what's going to come out next. I mean, the Zappa catalog is like the Hendrix catalog, right? You
Yeah,
just get, they're finding stuff in the vault almost like every day.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, next, The Damned. Uh,
Skipped with Ian Hunter there, right?
oh, did I skip Ian Hunter? I
Yeah,
did. Oh, see, that's bad. Ian Hunter, welcome to the club. I never want to skip Ian Hunter.
yeah.
Um, Cleveland Rocks has always been a great, you
Oh, I
know,
love it. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, this is old school glam, like you say, boogie rock. Uh,
yeah.
Ian
I
Hunter,
get more out of this catalog than I do out of Mott. I love You're Never Alone with a Schizophrenic and Short Back and Sides and Overnight Angels, all those ones in there, right?
yeah, I felt like he deserved better, as far as again, going back to the classic rock radio.
Yeah.
I hate it when they pick one song and then, I don't know, Cleveland Rocks was never played a lot on the East Coast classic rock radio. It really was maybe it was played in the Midwest a lot, right? But I
Yeah.
never remember being played a lot here.
Hmm.
Okay, we'll go to the next, The Damned, the Black Album. Now, The
Yeah.
Damned is one of your favorite bands, right? So this is
Yeah.
not a surprise. But a 17-minute song by The Damned.
Yeah. Curtain call. And as I say in this, I'm embarrassed to say this, but it took me years and years and years to even recognize or realize that there was a curtain call out there because my Canadian copy was just the single studio album.
Hmm.
And then I was enough of a fan to actually have the import copy of the full album of Live at Shepperton Studios. But somehow I guess I never flipped through the racks and never saw a proper UK double album of the Black Album with Curtain Call on it and
Most
half
of
of
their
Shepperton. So it's bizarre, but yeah, it's incredible. It's an amazingly cool gothic atmospheric epic that they did there, and then the rest of it's live. So yeah, pretty cool.
My first thought is, did most of their fan base last through 17 minutes? I guess so.
Yeah, yeah. And well, they're also becoming less punk on this album. So
True.
yeah, I don't know. I haven't really kind of taken a look here, but do we have any albums that are three side studio and just one side live?
Mm.
So yeah, I don't know who's ever done that, but the Dam broke a lot of rules, so pretty
That
cool.
would be The Kids Are Right, I guess. Three studio tracks.
Oh, is it okay?
Yeah. Kiss Alive 2 is the next one. And
Oh, oh yeah,
you know,
yeah.
of course you have to
Most
have
famous one for me, and just yeah, it again, you get into that annoying aspect that there's this half studio side, and what annoys me the most is that I think as I believe I say here, um, that it's probably yeah, it's a better side than any side all the way back to side one of Destroyer. So I think it's a better side than the two sides of Rock and Roll Over, and it's a better side than the two sides of Love Gun.
and Rocket Ride is a great song.
Yeah,
And of course you have every Kiss song has to have a sexual innuendo, right? I mean,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
almost blatantly. It
yeah.
doesn't even hide it.
Yeah.
Uh, Genesis Three Sides Live. You got me here too. Um, of course, this is one of those Genesis eras where I'm kind of like, I don't know. I love Abacab. I know you're a big fan too.
Yeah.
Uh, I just loved when that album came out, and a lot of Genesis fans kind of abandoned it, right? Um,
Yeah.
that era, but this one was not in my record collection. Um, and you seem
Yeah,
to
this album really has the spirit of Abacab on it, and I really liked those 3x3 tracks that were put on here from the EP. I love Paper Late. I think Paper Late's just an effervescent, very beautifully put together pop song.
see. I wouldn't expect that from you, but okay, let's move on to the next. Number two, Gillan, another one of your favorite bands,
Yeah.
or um, I never got. I love Gillan, but I never got into his solo stuff that much. But I know you have. So why did you?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see why you picked this.
But you got to be careful when you say solo stuff because
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah, I
Ian
know.
Gillan albums which I don't think are very good, and then there's Ian Gillan band albums which
Yes,
are like fusion,
right, right.
and then there's Gillan, which I love. You know, I call them the punk Deep Purple or the drunk Deep Purple or Deep Purple crossed with the Doors, because it's just a very singular, strange, frantic, dirty recordings, weird kind of Ray Manzarek keyboards all over the place from Colin Towns. So it's a really interesting, unique band. But yeah, I guess Gillan solo has three phases: the fusion phase, the Gillan phase, and then the disparate kind of all over the place handful of solo albums,
So
right?
you call it the honorary new wave of British heavy metal. Um, I guess so. Yeah, they have that
Yeah, well, that's the whole discussion. Who belongs and who doesn't,
two
right? You know, a
two
lot of people
scantily
won't include
clad.
Gillan because it's old guys, right? But it's a new punky band. But is it new enough? Because the first album's 78, the second album 79. So that, the new wave of British heavy metal police come out with that one and say, no, they got two albums in the 70s. They can't be a new wave of British
Of
heavy
course,
metal
the
band,
artwork, right? Two scantily clad women, beautiful
right?
women in an alley I would never walk down.
Yeah.
Um,
But I really, again, I don't like the messy idea of them just throwing in a live. To me, this felt like they're throwing because the sticker, I think, even said something to effect. They're kind of throwing in a live album to push the fans to buy this. It's like a bonus
mhm,
live album kind of
good
stuck on
point.
this album. Yeah,
And this one, the number one, and I think this deserves it. ZZ
yeah,
Top Fandango.
yeah.
This is like fits perfectly. And were you thinking number one right away for this album?
Absolutely. It's the one that drives all of us fans of ZZ Top crazy, right?
Hmm.
Absolutely nuts, right? Because the live album is not very good, and the studio side is maybe the best studio side they ever did. Like
Right.
it's incredible studio side, and the live album is just them too much of the blues and rock and roll roots and the medleys and things they didn't write, and it's just to me it's a snooze fest, right? And then obviously the annoyance of having this hybrid album to talk about. And then I guess the last annoyance is, this is one of those bands. I think we did a whole top 20, or maybe it was on my podcast, but I've definitely gone through the list. Actually, it was a podcast episode. The 70 the bands that missed the boat with the great double live album in the 70s, right?
Mhm.
And ZZ Top is poster child for that too, right?
I mean, you give props to one of their best songs, Heard It on the X.
Oh yeah.
Um, calling one of their top five, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, so this is an album that if you're a classic rock fan, you should have it in your collection. That's
Yeah.
for sure. But
Yeah.
that wraps it up, and I would agree with everything except for the Frank Marino kind of threw me for a loop.
Right. And,
But
and Amagama, you're right, is a super famous one that could have
I
been
would have
on
replaced it
been
with
on here.
Amagama, I think.
Yep. Good point.
Um, so what's next? What's coming up next? Think your next top 20. I'm trying to think what the next one is. Are you looking at one now?
Oh yeah. So when you say I'm not working on any at the moment, but I guess we've got one or two that haven't gone
Yeah.
up yet. So we had what did we have?
And the under 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we haven't done the under 5 yet, the under 5 minute prog songs yet.
Mhm.
There was one other one. There might even be two other ones we haven't got up yet. I'm
Yeah.
not
I'm
sure.
trying to space them out, man. You pump them out
Yeah,
so
yeah,
quickly. Um,
yeah.
but I think about that Power Pop one. Um,
Okay.
and before we sign off, maybe you could promote some of the other podcasts and stuff you're doing. You're, God, you're busy. Um, the Contrarians, right?
Yep,
Maybe
that's
give
our
for
video
people
show.
who
Yep.
haven't for people who haven't heard that or seen it, maybe you can give a little maybe you could summarize it a little bit.
Well, it started as more of a tighter concept, but now we have all sorts of things on there. We do the dark horse panels. We come up with topics where the Patreons can join on, and that can be anything. We've got our weekly album cover show, and I've been doing this long series. I think I've done 60 episodes of this now, called "Reliving Old Reviews is a Useless Tool of Confusion."
Mm.
And that's a quote from a Pantera song that always cracked us up. But the idea there is I find an old classic review of something that became a big album that people talked about for decades, and go through the review and review the review and see if the writer got it right and what they can compare things to. And there's nothing to compare, say Black Sabbath to, or Metallica Kill 'Em All or whatever, right? Or these massive, Queen Night at the Opera, it just comes out. What can you possibly say about Bohemian Rhapsody? And I always found that concept interesting. Like, what can these reviewers say about something that's going to be an absolutely legendary album? Did they get it completely wrong and say these guys will never make it or whatever, right? So yeah, we've done like 60 of those, and they're
Nothing
usually
did get
between
around.
5 minutes and 12 minutes long, kind of thing. They're not very long. And yeah, of course, I write a lot of books, and I've got the audio podcast History in Five Songs with Martin Popoff as
Pantheon.
well at 290 episodes at this point. So
You got to mention Pantheon. We
yeah,
both share
absolutely.
Pantheon
Yep, yep,
podcast.
yep.
Um, okay, great. Well, I think we should do this more often because it's a lot of fun. It's
Yeah, it's a
quick. It's
blast.
quick.
Yep,
Does take a lot of
yep,
time.
yeah.
But your top 20s are a big favorite on goldminemag.com. So
Great.
um, keep them coming. They didn't appear in the print magazine yet, but I think they found a home on the website.
Nice. Good to
So
hear. Good to hear.
very good. Thank you, Martin, and we'll see you next time,
All
man.
right. Thank you, Pat. This has been a lot of fun.
All right.